Good morning. I'm Don Dickey, a member of this congregation, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to All Souls Unitarian Universalist Church. And for those of you who are joining us over the internet, welcome to you as well. 1 week until the Super Bowl, and we will be represented for the first time in 50 years. And also today there's a 5 and 10K run totally underground here in Kansas City. So interesting things going on. This is the time we take to welcome our visitors and guests. Do we have any members who've brought a visitor with them? If so, please have them stand. Let us know their name and where they're from. Are there any visitors who've come on their own and would feel comfortable letting us know your name and where you're from? Yes, sir. Please stand. JJ, welcome. Okay. Thank you very much.
Again, good morning, and welcome to the gathering of this covenant community of memory and promise. The covenant of memory and promise takes one of its most stark forms in the vow, never again. It is a promise of memory, calling us to acknowledge that tomorrow, January 27th, will be the 75th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz-Birkenau, the largest Nazi concentration and death camp, by the Russian Red Army. The camp itself was not a military objective, and the Russian soldiers who came upon it were unprepared for what they found there. 7,500 surviving prisoners, sick and starving, abandoned by the fleeing guards. Perfunctory attempts to cover up evidence of more than 1 million murders. Organized human cruelty and human suffering on an incomprehensible scale. We know that those who do not learn from history are condemned to repeat it. The covenant of never again cannot be fulfilled by those who do not remember. And yet memory alone is not enough. Never again can only be fulfilled as the future unfolds. It requires enduring vigilance against the human potential for supremacy and tyranny, for persecution and hatred. We also know, as Dr. King has taught us, that returning hate for hate only multiplies hate, adding deeper darkness to a night already devoid of stars. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. Therefore, we come together in community to honor the promise of never again, to bring the light of love and compassion wherever hate and cruelty arise in this world, to fulfill the demands of justice and the pleas of mercy wherever evil works its power, beginning always in our own hearts and lives. With the support of this community, we would cultivate our witness for human freedom and kinship so that never again remains a lived reality. We kindle this chalice flame as a symbol of the light that drives away darkness and the love that overcomes hate. May this illumination be with us today, tomorrow, and always.
Hello.
Oh. You go.
My name is Maya, and I light this chalice for the inherent worth and dignity of every person.
Thank you, Maya. Now I invite us to rise in body or spirit and speak once again the words of our covenant promise to one another in community. Together we affirm, goodwill is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Let's remain risen for our opening song. Our commitment to human fellowship means that we are called upon to be glad with those who rejoice and to weep with those who mourn. And therefore we set aside this time in our gathering to share with one another the joys and concerns that are now shaping our lives. May the beauty and sweetness of these brief flowers remind us to hold one another in the bonds of sympathy, encouragement, and care. At the end of this segment, we will have a moment when the cameras are turned away. If you would prefer not to appear on the live stream, I'll tell you when that time comes. I want to begin with a flower of gratitude and celebration for all of those who worked so hard to make the first 3 days of our emergency warming center so easy and successful and welcoming to our neighbors who are homeless. This is becoming an important ministry for us, and it only happens because so many people give time and energy to make it happen. Amen. Are there other joys or concerns to be shared? Yeah. Hi, come on. Can you tell us your name?
I'm Ariel, and I'm sharing because my mom is in jail because she was working on drugs, and she probably didn't know that she was going to be in jail, but she did. And she went to one jail, but she escaped and did what they say, so now she's in real jail because they gave her another chance.
I'm sorry, honey. I'm glad you told us. Can you put a flower? There you go.
need 2 flowers. One is in memory of my father, who passed away on the 13th. And the other one is in gratitude for the kindnesses, both small and large, I received from my many friends. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Scott England, and I just placed a flower, keeping my mother-in-law in our thoughts. She's been in the hospital for the past week, and we're at that point where she's starting to have some memory issues and losing some strength, and so the family is going to be having some hard discussions about how we can help support mom stay at home as long as possible and what next steps might be.
Yeah. Good luck with that.
Hi, I'm Richard. My flower is for rejoicing because my cousin just had a baby.
Oh, excellent. Does that make you a great uncle or something?
I don't know, my uncle could not be more excited to
I bet.
Well, I'm glad I have you all sitting here. I can tell you all at once. A week ago, Friday, Dick came home from Kingswood Rehab.
Yay!
At the end of the 20 days allotted. However, this immediate past Friday, he went back.
Oh.
Because Medicare will now pay for for some more days. I don't know what it is. He needs a little more strength, a little more ability to transfer from one thing to another. And so we're getting a tune-up.
Okay. We are so delighted to see both of you here today. It's great.
I'm Evelyn Maddox, and I want to lift the name of my great-niece, Rose Griffith, in Wichita, Kansas. She's 2 years old, has been treated for leukemia for about 4 months now. She's been very, very sick, but I rejoice. I choke up. Children's Mercy has saved her life.
Wow.
And she has up and downs, but bless Children's Mercy.
Yes. Yeah. Let's hear it for medical science. Thank you.
I want to celebrate that we have a new chairman for the Facilities Committee.
Yes.
Many thanks to Butch Murphy and John Maher for agreeing to take on the assignment. It's been a pleasure to serve the committee with the committee for the last 3 years, and especially the support that we get from the members of the committee.
Do you want to put a flower, Chuck?
I always forget this.
Thank you. Hey, John.
John Kerman. First, I want to second Kendall's commendation of everyone who volunteered for the Warming Center, but I particularly, where are you, want to point out Barbara Griggs, who gave out more than anyone I know of, tremendous amount. She is our fearless, well, maybe not fearless, but bold, ambitious leader, and she really made it possible.
Indeed.
Second, I want to express joy for the fact that Rukmi's brother, Rinjui, who is literally on the other side of the world, he had papillary thyroid cancer, been treated for it. It came back, was treated again, and he just had a checkup, and he's cancer-free, so we're very happy about that.
Yeah, I bet.
Hi, my name's Patty, and my granddaughter's come up a couple of times now, and so sort of my turn. And my daughter is doing, despite the fact that she's in prison, she is doing the best that she has done in 14 years because she's properly medicated. She's seeing a counselor. And I don't know if it will last or not. My hope is that it will. My hope is that now that she's in her late 20s, her body's kind of catching up and having the bad experiences that she's had. Perhaps everything will finally begin to gel. But anyway, the joy is that she's doing great right now.
What's
she's
her name?
doing great. Oh, her name is Amanda Morgan.
Okay. We will keep Amanda in our
Thank you.
thoughts.
And also, I'm really grateful that we have a tribe. Ariel and I and David, my boyfriend, we have a tribe.
Yeah.
You guys,
exactly.
here, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I do always wear flowers.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing. At this time, we'll turn the cameras aside so anyone who doesn't want to be on the live stream can come up. Yeah, I know. One last flower in recognition of all the outreachings of the Spirit that abide unspoken in our hearts, and invite you to join me in the congregational response that will be on the screen. Together, let us give thanks for those moments when we can feel that we live in a world that is not indifferent to our needs. We all have so many prayers, 1,000 prayers, 1,000 needs, that really only need one answer. Let the world not be indifferent. And may we live and be with each other in the way that shows this truth, whatever the day brings, that neither are we indifferent to each other. At this time, we will invite our children to go to their classes and send them forth with song.
Good morning. My name is Alan Proctor, and I'm a member of this congregation. This offering today will help support All Souls. Our church community has done a lot for other worthy organizations and causes over the past months and has often shared a portion of our offerings. But today, the money collected will further our needs and stay right here. I know most of us pledge funds regularly to All Souls, but our gifts during the year don't provide quite enough to meet our budget. Our offerings during church provide additional needed income. So, consider this morning what All Souls does to enrich each of you. Is it the moving and insightful sermons our minister provides, or the highly relevant forum talks? Is it the exceptional experience we give our children through the religious education program, or the beautiful music we enjoy each week? Is it the opportunity to share our love and commitment to others through volunteering for needy causes and people? Is it the communal gathering of individuals in this room, some of whom are very much like us and some of whom are very different from us? Is it dinners for 8, the book club, the men's group? I could go on and on. You would probably not be here today if you did not somehow feel enhanced by this community, this tribe, eh? So let's take a few brief moments for each of us to quietly reflect upon how we are enriched by All Souls. Today, I am asking that you consider the value of inclusion in the spirit that is All Souls and celebrate it with a gift. The offering will now be given and gratefully received.
All my memories of love hang upon high stars. All the souls I've lost to tears now.
Will you join me in the words of dedication for our offering? We dedicate our offerings and our actions to the mission at the heart of this congregation, to build a respectful, caring community, to inspire personal and spiritual growth, and to create change toward a just and compassionate society.
Readings from the leaflets of the White House, White Rose.
Freudian.
It's a good start.
Very Freudian.
From the second leaflet. It is impossible to engage in an intellectual discourse on National Socialism because it cannot be defended on rational grounds. It is wrong to speak of a National Socialist philosophy, for if there were such a thing, one would have to try by means of analysis and discussion either to prove its validity or to disprove it. In actuality, however, we face a totally different situation. At its very beginning, this movement depended on the deception and betrayal of one's fellow humans. Even then, it was inwardly corrupt and could only support itself by constant lies. As Hitler states in his book Mein Kampf, it's unbelievable to what extent one must betray a people in order to rule it.
Why are the German people so apathetic in the face of all these abominable crimes, crimes so unworthy of the human race? Hardly anyone thinks about that. It is accepted as fact and put out of mind. The German people slumber on in their dull, stupid sleep and thereby encourage these fascist criminals. We give them the opportunity to carry on their abuses, and of course they do so. Have all Germans sunk into a terminal sleep from which there is no awakening ever again? It will be so if the Germans do not protest whenever they can against this gang of criminals, if they don't feel compassion for the hundreds of thousands of victims, and not only compassion, but much more guilt. For our apathy allows these evil men to act as they do. We tolerate this government that has brought upon itself such an enormous burden of guilt. Indeed, we ourselves are to blame for the fact that it came about at all.
From the third leaflet. One issue needs to be made clear and unambiguous. Every human being has a right to a just state, a state that safeguards the freedom of the individual as well as the good of the whole. For man should be free and independent while fulfilling his natural duty of living and working together with his fellow citizens, and strive to achieve earthly happiness through self-reliance and self-motivation.
But our present state is a dictatorship of evil. If you know that already, why do you not rouse yourselves? Why do you allow these men in power to rob you step by step, both openly and in secret, of one of your rights after another, until one day nothing at all will be left but a mechanized state system presided over by criminals and drunkards? Is your spirit already so crushed by abuse that you forget it is your right, or rather your moral duty, to eradicate this system?
A sonnet from the works of Edna St. Vincent Millay. My earnestness, which might at first offend, forgive me, for the duty it implies. I am the convoy to the cloudy end of a most bright and regal enterprise, which, under angry constellations, ill-mounted and under-rationed and unspurred, set forth to find if any country still might do obeisance to an honest word. Duped and delivered up to rascals, bound and bleeding, his mouth stuffed, on his knees, robbed and imprisoned and adjudged unsound, I have beheld my master. If you please, forgive my earnestness, who at his side received his swift instructions till he died.
To Africa? To Africa?
The sun on the meadow is summery one. The stag in the forest runs free. But
of the white rose. At the age of 21, a student at the University of Munich in February of 1943, executed by the authority of Hitler's Third Reich. Sophie Scholl goes to the guillotine in the high flower of her youthful idealism for the sake of ideas. But you knew that if you have been paying attention at our high school graduation ceremonies. You know that I give to our rising young adults a white rose and a copy of Sophie Scholl's biography and an invitation to discover the principles that will be worthy of their sacrifice. The sacrifice of ease and comfort, of time and energy, of social approval and financial gain. We all must find the ideals that will test us with their cost, or lose all integrity in trivial self-indulgence. The sacrifice of life itself, if it comes to that. It has been all too easy over the course of most of my ministry to hear this message as hyperbole, a page out of history long gone. It has been easy to suppose that there is no occasion for life itself to be at stake in the moral commitments to which we give our loyalty to these days. We might concede that there is always a risk if you take a stand for some public issue of justice, that some crazy person with a gun will take you out, like Martin Luther King. Theoretically, it could happen. But the odds for any given college freshman or 20-year-old activist were so low, we didn't seriously calculate them. How about now? How hard is it to imagine, if this administration continues in power, camps for dissident youth, where they take away your cell phones and won't let lawyers in? Where you are only one fanatical, screaming judge away from a bullet or a lethal injection. That's what Sophie and her brother Hans and their friend Christoph Probst faced. Judge Roland Freisler, head of the People's Court, especially established to adjudicate political affiliation crimes, one of the architects of the program to exterminate Jews as the final solution, enraged by any hint of disloyalty to his regime. How hard would we have to look to find his equivalent in America's federal judiciary today? It may not seem all that daring what Hans and Sophie and their friends did. In these days of instantaneous posting on the internet, the idea of surreptitiously running off copies of flyers and carrying them around to university buildings for students and others to find may feel quaint. It was work, and all the elements were tricky. They had to buy paper and ink and stamps for mailing in small quantities at random shops to avoid arousing suspicion. They had to do the copying at night to hide from curious eyes. They had to support their activities with money that they begged from their families and friends without indicating what they meant to do with it. In addition to mailing the documents, they would take the train to other university towns away from Munich, like travelers on holiday with a suitcase that in reality was packed full with leaflets. By doing this, they hoped both to inspire other students to follow their example and to create the impression that the Society of the White Rose was a widespread organization with extensive popular support. In point of fact, they did succeed in starting satellite resistance groups in Hamburg and Berlin. Throughout the spring and summer of 1942, the White Rose authored and distributed 4 different flyers documenting war crimes by the German military, the persecution and murder of Jews, and the truth about heavy losses to Russian troops. Most of the men in the group were forced to serve tours in the army. As a medical student, Hans Scholl was sent to treat wounded soldiers and had firsthand knowledge of conditions at the front. Along with pointing out lies being told by the government, all the pamphlets called on the conscience of ordinary German people and urged them to participate in passive resistance and sabotage in order to hasten the defeat of Nazi forces. Sophie's perspective was greatly influenced by her philosophy teacher, Kurt Huber. In his lectures on Immanuel Kant, Huber argued that Kant was a great moralist who believed that all human beings had the ability to reason and ought to have the freedom to exercise this ability. Reason, not accepting the orders of authority, was the basis of morality. In his own time, said Huber, Kant had opposed all forms of unthinking obedience, repeatedly claiming that independent, rational thought was the basis of all good conduct. There are those who will tell you that Kant's work makes for dry, abstract reading. In 1942 Munich, Sophie Scholl didn't think so. The 5th flyer appeared in January of 1943, distributed simultaneously in widely separated cities, including Stuttgart, Vienna, Ulm, Frankfurt, Linz, Salzburg, and Augsburg, as well as Munich. This suggested to authorities that an organization of considerable size was at work, one with capable leadership and considerable resources, and they began to pay closer attention. This leaflet ended with a vision for Germany after the defeat of the Nazis and the end of the war. Imperialistic designs for power, regardless from which side they come, must be neutralized for all time, it said. All centralized power, like that exercised by the Prussian state in Germany and in Europe, must be eliminated. The working class must be liberated from its degraded conditions of slavery. Freedom of speech, freedom of religion, the protection of individual citizens from the arbitrary will of criminal regimes of violence. These will be the bases of the new Europe. Immediately following the Reich's acknowledgement of the German defeat at Leningrad, the students issued a 6th flyer, as well as painting graffiti on university neighborhood walls saying "Down with Hitler" and "Freedom." On February 18th, Sophie and Hans brought a new printing of 1,300 copies of Leaflet 6 to the university lecture halls in Munich, and Sophie was spotted dropping a handful of them from a 2nd-floor balcony to the courtyard below by a janitor who quickly reported this to the Gestapo and sealed the building. The 2 of them were arrested together with one of their co-authors, interrogated, tried, convicted, and executed within 4 days. In all, 7 members of the group were eventually executed for their participation in the work of the White Rose. 23 others were arrested or accused. Some were tried and sentenced to prison. Others, in the confusion of the war's ending, were never formally brought to trial. All were released after the Allied victory, and the story of the White Rose Society was widely reported in Europe and the United States. My own suspicion is that there were other members of the network, especially in other cities, that the Munich students successfully shielded throughout their interrogations. We probably do not know even today all those who contributed to the conspiracy of the White Rose. It would be reassuring to say that the Society of the White Rose was successful in their efforts to rouse the conscience of the German people to bring down the Nazis. But I honestly think it was more the Russian winter and Hitler's own insanity that did that. Where they did succeed was in refusing to be made helpless accomplices to evil. Sophie and Hans and their friends were well aware of both the danger and the futility of what they were doing. The men perhaps could reason that the odds of their dying in battle increased with each step toward Germany's defeat. They might as well sell their lives for taking some kind of positive action. Sophie and the other girls had no such logic. Theirs was the risk of pure moral conviction and personal solidarity. I tell this story to the young people graduating from our religious education program because I remember from my own experience at that age how pragmatic and compromising all the adult advice I received at the time appeared to me. There was no challenging initiation ritual, no vision quest, nothing to test my convictions or prove my capacity for devotion. Those who loved me thought only to protect my well-being, not to risk nurturing my ideals. I ached for the opportunity to do something daunting, courageous, meaningful. I had heard the history of the Second World War, but I did not know about Sophie Scholl in those days. I think she might have meant a lot to me. These are the questions that philosophy is intended to help us ask and answer. What is the source of your values? What should you do when you are afraid? What obligations come with your privilege? What is worth living and dying for? Truth is one of the traditional answers, along with justice, freedom, and reason, self-knowledge, compassion, and community. They don't change that much really over the centuries, those basic ideas. We are forever having to figure out what they mean in new contexts of history, and forever rediscovering what happens when you let go of them through indolence or greed. Philosophy forever begins in tragedy and suffering and ends at the throne of integrity, without ever a shortcut. When a young person of intelligence and conviction starts learning about the answers to those fundamental questions, tyrants beware. For a certain percentage of them anyway, no bribes will tempt them and no threats will silence them. Integrity will be their lodestar, and they will find integrity in resistance, no matter how trivial or impossible it may seem. If I were a praying person, I would pray for three things. I would pray that the memory of Sophia Magdalena Scholl and her co-conspirators might live in our hearts, handed from generation to generation like a talisman of great fortune, a treasure to help our children as they step forth and lift their voices to challenge the evils of their own day. I would pray that here in this place, the young people for whose spiritual well-being we are responsible, may learn the same courage and integrity that created the Society of the White Rose and spurred its members to speak out in the name of human dignity and decency, even at so great a cost. I would pray that whenever we see truth-telling grow so costly as that, we might all realize that something has gone very wrong in the world and needs all of us to resist and to set it right. Finally, I would pray that the spirit that was in Sophie walk among us today, inspiring us, no matter how hopeless we sometimes feel, to stay strong, to speak truth to power, to dare to name tyranny and evil when we find them in our own midst. You may think that this is a sermon about history in honor of Holocaust Remembrance Day tomorrow, and you would be right, of course. But history is not just the past that we study and remember. It is also the days that we live, yesterday and tomorrow, the legacy that we leave for those who will wonder at us, at our courage or our complicity, in the example of the story we are telling the world even now. This is the challenge posed so urgently by Representative Adam Schiff's closing argument at the impeachment trial last Thursday, when he said, Colonel Vindman said, "Here, right matters." Well, let me tell you something. If right doesn't matter, it doesn't matter how good the Constitution is. It doesn't matter how brilliant the framers were. Doesn't matter how good or bad our advocacy in this trial is. Doesn't matter how well written the oath of impartiality is. If right doesn't matter, we're lost. If truth doesn't matter, we're lost. Framers couldn't protect us from ourselves if right and truth don't matter. But here, right is supposed to matter. It's what's made us the greatest nation on earth. No constitution can protect us if right doesn't matter anymore. And you know you can't trust this president to do what's right for this country. You can trust he will do what's right for Donald Trump. He'll do it now. He's done it before. He'll do it for the next several months. He'll do it in the election if he's allowed to. This is why, if you find him guilty, you must find that he should be removed. Because right matters. Because right matters and the truth matters, because otherwise we are lost. In the end, that is the premise of the White Rose, that right matters and truth matters, and we are not, at least not all of us, lost. My friends, dearly beloved church, I can make no promises that things may not get worse in this nation before they get better. We may find truth on the scaffold and wrong on the throne again. It has happened before now. Integrity may become more costly than this generation ever imagined. But this I do promise you. Until the day the earth folds in upon itself, perhaps even beyond the final sigh of our own species, there will be white roses. There will be the ideals and the questions of the human spirit, and the answer to that summoning and to all our seeking will never be anything other than integrity. Not wealth, not power, not deceit, not the momentary credulity of the masses or the whims of tyrants. only freedom, justice, and reason. Only compassion and community and self-awareness. Only truth, no matter how persecuted and forsaken. Always above the generations, the lonely prophets will rise, with truth flaring as the day star within their glowing eyes. And we shall behold that radiant token of faith above all fear, like Sophie's. Evil and injustice and falsehood shall be lost in the growing light of truth and morning, and the sweet promise of the white rose shall appear. So let's stand and sing. We extinguish this flame, but never the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fires of commitment. For all these we carry in our minds and hearts until we are together again. Now, therefore, since the struggle deepens, since evil abides and good does not yet prosper, let us gather what strength we have, what confidence, what determination, that our small victories may end in triumph, and the world awaited become in time a world attained. Go in peace.